What's up, Ragin Nation? How y'all doing? This is Alex. You're watching Ragin Ronin Review. It has been a while since I made a video for you guys. I apologize for that. My company, Ragin Ronin Productions, has been busy with all kinds of work and projects, so that kept me busy for a bit over a week. But now I got a free day, so I got to make a video for you guys, and specifically a top 10 list. It's been a while since I made a top 10 list, so let's do it. This top 10 list wasn't requested by anybody, but I decided I wanted to make this top 10 list for a very specific reason. Now, you guys know that I love movies. I love the stories, the characters, but I also love the technical aspect of filmmaking, and which brings me to talk about this list, which is my top 10 live action 3D films list. Now, I know what you guys might be thinking. You're probably thinking, why would you want to make this list? I don't care about 3D and all that stuff. Well, my audience is divided in this particular subject because there's the people who don't like 3D, don't care for the format, you know, they only want to watch things in 2D and they think 3D just is no good. But there's also another group of my audience who thinks that, you know, they welcome the format, and they always ask me, hey Alex, should I watch this movie in 3D or should I save my money and watch it in 2D? Well, this is exactly why I'm making this video, because I want to tell you what, in my opinion, is the standard, or what has raised the bar for what I'd like to call good 3D, or decent 3D, or just 3D that's worth, or films that are worth watching in 3D. Anyways, let's get on with the top 10 list. I don't want to waste any more time because this is a pretty in-depth list. Let's start off with number 10, and that is Tron Legacy, and it came out in 2010, directed by Joseph Kosinski, and it was shot in 3D using the Pace Fusion rigs. That was the same 3D camera systems that was used by James Cameron in Avatar, and they also used the Sony F-35s, which were also used in Oblivion. And the reason why they used that was because Joseph Kosinski wanted to capture certain scenes in the IMAX format, but without using the cumbersome IMAX cameras, because Sony F-35s can shoot in really, really high resolution. So when it expanded, you got that amazing high resolution, and also in 3D. So that was really awesome. Now, the movie was in 2D and 3D. It had both 2D and 3D presentation, and the 3D was primarily in those, you know, computer realm scenes, all right? And I have to say that this is a decent 3D film because a lot of it was in the dark environment. You know, the computer realm is very, very dark. So they did a decent job, even though it was a dark environment. You know, when you put on those glasses, you know, you get a bit of light loss, right? So taking that in consideration, they did a pretty decent job with the 3D. Moving on to number 9, we got Piranha 3D, which came out in 2010. Now, a lot of you are thinking, well, you know, the 3D in Piranha was a total gimmick. I agree, it was a gimmick, but even though it was a post-converted movie, they still did a good job with that. And another thing is that the filmmakers originally wanted the 3D in Piranha 3D to be you know, part of the movie. It wasn't an afterthought, and that's very important for you to know. It was not an afterthought. They intended for the film to have a 3D presentation, and therefore they filmed it with 3D in mind. Now, that is something that's different than just having post-conversion as an afterthought, because post-conversion as an afterthought, that's just like a cash grab. But, you know, Piranha 3D in 3D, what made it fun to watch? I mean, you got like 3D, you know, things, but you know, it was it made the movie a lot of fun. And James Cameron kind of disagrees with that. He actually made a comment saying that, you know, that's when you don't want to use 3D. That's when an example where 3D is wasted. I'm gonna have to disagree with that. I'm gonna keep an open mind and say that it totally enhanced the viewing experience for Piranha 3D. So watch it in 3D if you can, you know, on 3D Blu-ray. Number 8 is Underworld Awakening, which came out in 2012, and those were filmed with the Red Epic 3D cameras, no longer with not with the Pace Fusion 3D camera systems that was used in Avatar and all those other films. This was filmed in Vancouver, but that has nothing to do with anything. What I'd like to mention again is that, once again, this is another film that was primarily has dark scenes. Okay, a lot of it takes place at night because we're dealing with vampires here. So even though they had the movie take place in dark, you really felt the 3D. There was a lot of depth, okay, and they presented it in a really great way. There was a little bit of like things where they threw stuff at you, but most of it was all about the depth. They really wanted to capture that kind of 3D depth of field, and they did a good job with that. That's definitely a movie that I feel that it needed to be watched or seen in 3D. Number 7 is Prometheus, which came out in 2012, directed by Ridley Scott. Now, on the technical aspect aspect, they used 5 of the Threality Technical Atom 3D rigs, and they configured 4 of them for the Red Epic 3D cameras. And what was really great about that was that Ridley Scott was very, very particular about certain scenes. He tweaked certain scenes to be brighter in consideration of the light loss when you were wearing those 3D glasses. Now, a lot of people don't know that. I just found that out. And that is great because when I was watching Prometheus in the IMAX 3D format, I felt that, wow, this looks great. Like this, it didn't feel like it didn't feel dizzying, and I didn't feel disoriented. I really felt that the effects of the 3D in terms of depth, they brought us into that alien planet, and it was all about the depth. It wasn't gimmicky at all. It was kind of like the same type of 3D effect that Avatar had. Moving on, we got Dread in 2012, which was shot digitally and primarily in 3D using the Red MX and the SI2K, as well as the Phantom Flex high-speed cameras. Now, I have to mention the Phantom Flex high-speed cameras because, as you already know, if you've seen it, the one thing, the one of the antagonist elements about Dread in the story is the slow-mo drug, and when you take it, your brain processes everything at a slower speed, thus getting that slow-mo effect, and it looks great in 3D. Now, this is a movie that simply needs to be seen in 3D. Like, you have the option to watch in 2D or 3D. I recommend in 3D because that was the whole thing going about 3D. I mean, with Dread being seen in 3D, it was all about these amazing slow-mo effects, and it was a very beautiful visual experience. And it was also a great film. The movie was primarily shot in 3D, but there's also a little bit of 3D conversion, and you can tell at those scenes where you have like glass and water flying in the screen. Those were the digital 3D effects that was done in the post-converted process. But otherwise, everything else looked great in 3D. So definitely watch that in 3D. Number 5 is Transformers Dark of the Moon, which came out in 2011. Now, originally Bay did not want it. Michael Bay didn't want it to be shot in 3D, or he did not even want 3D at all because he feels like it's a bit of a gimmick, which I kind of agree with them. But James Cameron, you know, Bay and Cameron are good friends, all right? And they always like to show each other the cool stuff. James Cameron always says to him, "Hey, look what I did." Anyways, James Cameron really convinced Michael Bay to have Transformers Dark of the Moon shot in 3D. And he convinced them by lending him the best hands in the business, and that is he lent them his crew that worked on Avatar. These guys are the best guys to ever work on 3D. They understand the Pace Fusion camera rig, but what Michael Bay did is that he had it made into a smaller version of itself, which was great because, you know, Michael Bay shoots in a very aggressive style. He likes to shoot fast, and there's a lot of handheld work. And with this smaller system, he's able to bring the 3D effect while also without compromising his own style. Now, he did tone down his aggressive style. You can see that there's longer takes, wider shots, and steadier camera movements, and it really helps that 3D effect, that 3D presentation. 70% of the film was shot in 3D, 30% was post-converted, but you can't even tell the difference because I think that Michael Bay really took the time to really understand the format, and I think he did a really great job with the 3D presentation, so good on him for doing that. Number 4 is The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, which came out in 2012, directed by Peter Jackson. Now, this was shot with 30 Red Epic 3D cameras. That's a lot of cameras, okay? But one thing about the 3D which makes this 3D better than Transformers Dark of the Moon 3D is that they shot it in 48 frames per second. Now, with 24 frames per second and also 3D, you got light loss, you got motion blur. 48 frames per second, that eliminates most of that because you have more frames to deal with, and then the human eye, you know, feels like things are going smoother. And that's what helped the 3D effect. Now you get that soap opera effect, but still, the 3D was still very, very well presented to you. You got things jumping at you, and you also felt depth, and which was great. So I think what's his name? Peter Jackson really knew what the heck he was doing when he really thought about doing this, and really kind of changing the game in a way. He really did something that was very unconventional, so good on him for that. Now we're going to the top 3 list. Now, these are some really phenomenal films that are to be presented in 3D, and that would be Life of Pi, directed by Ang Lee, which came out last year, 2012. Now, I gotta let you know, this was a post-converted process, okay? It was not shot in 3D at all. It was completely post-converted, but when Ang Lee wanted to make this movie, he completely had a 3D in mind. Like, he shot everything with 3D in mind, but the post-conversion was a very careful process. It was had a lot to do with, like, tweaking these digital effects to be in 3D, and he really did an amazing job with that. When you watch this film, you feel that he really knew what he was doing in the whole visual aspect. It's a very visual type of storytelling that he brought to us, and he did an excellent job. So good on him for that. Number 2 is a bit of a controversial thing because, well, it is Hugo, and Hugo, if you don't remember, was a contender along with Transformers Dark of the Moon for best visual effects. I completely disagree with who won. I think Transformers Dark of the Moon should have won, but Hugo does have way better 3D than Transformers Dark of the Moon. I apologize to my Ragin Nation fans and Transformers fans who completely disagree, but I'm gonna have to say that Hugo did have some amazing 3D effects in it. Now, it wasn't a movie that required action and big visual effects or big visuals like in general to really make the 3D stand out. It was all about really bringing things out there, okay? And I don't mean that things pop out at you where you have to dodge it and grab it. I'm talking about that something was right here and the background was right here and it was completely evident, and you just watching this thing right here and you really focus on it, and it really brought everything out there. This was one of the first movies where I felt that, man, like they really made a feature length film into a great 3D presentation, which brings me to number 1, and that is, of course, you already know what it is. It's Avatar. James Cameron, he is the one who pioneered 3D. He's still trying to pioneer it. This movie came out in 2009, and it changed the 3D game forever. So it's because of the success of Avatar where everybody wants to make 3D films. You know, some people think it's a bit of a cash grab, but what Avatar did for us is that he brought the audience into Pandora. When you watch this movie in IMAX 3D, you feel like you were in the movie, in this alien planet, you know, miles, like thousands and millions of miles away from Earth, and like I felt like I was in the movie, and Avatar was a movie that really brought us there. So James Cameron did an excellent job. It was the best 3D in Hollywood. So there you have it. What else can I say? He just did an excellent job with that. And so that is my top 10 list. Just a little bit of a review. Tron Legacy, Piranha 3D, Underworld Awakening, Prometheus, Dread, Transformers Dark of the Moon, The Hobbit, Life of Pi, Hugo, and Avatar. And keep in mind that all these directors are really high-profile directors. We're talking about James Cameron, Martin Scorsese, Ang Lee, Peter Jackson, Michael Bay, and Ridley Scott, and Joseph Kosinski, and all these other directors. Great directors, in fact, who really know how to tell a story in a very visual way. So there you have it. This is the standard for 3D. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope that you guys you know, feel informed about the 3D format. Now, I'm not someone who has been behind the camera of a 3D camera. I don't understand the process, but I think as someone who's a member of the movie-going public and audience and just a movie buff and movie fan in general, I understand it enough to really understand how it works and how you know the process works. I don't understand how it's actually done, but I at least understand it enough to really have confidence in presenting this information to you guys. So I hope you appreciate it. Anyways, as always, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like me on Facebook, The Ragin Nation, and also follow me on Twitter. My name is Alex Yu, and I got more top 10 lists for you guys. Make a request down below in the comment section. Tell me what kind of top 10 list that you want me to do for you guys, and I will do it for you guys. I got top 10 directors coming up. I got top 10 kung fu films, top 10 gangster films, all that. It's all coming up for you guys. So my name is Alex Yu. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace. I just don't buy it when Ultra Killian's right-hand man, I think his name is Savin, he points the finger at Tony Stark just like that, or no, he goes like that to Tony Stark, and then